Just as a demonstration of when I said earlier, I'll run this thing for like 30 seconds. I took the speed control out of it, so this is directly powered to the capacitors that this dead battery is charging. So, I mean, you think that a dead AA battery is going to do that? I mean, you can't run that constantly. So that's full power. And I'll bet you these wires are warm. A little bit. But, so, yeah, that dropped it down to 1152, but it's going back up. And that's, I mean, really not that much energy storage. These capacitors, they look like big batteries. They don't store much. This dead battery could charge those before this was gone probably 100 times. And that's the whole point in this. Bringing such low voltage, 1 volt, half a volt, of really what was crap 20 years ago, 300 milliamp hours. These Amazon rechargeables are like 2200 milliamp hour. So even though these can store energy and dump them really fast and absorb them really fast, they don't store a whole lot of actual storage of energy. These hold way more actual energy, so they just don't let it out very fast or very strong. And so, like I said, I mean, we take time to charge our Teslas. Like, why couldn't they just sit and trickle charge? Why can't they have little solar panels on them? Well, solar panels don't put out enough voltage, but they'll make a difference. You leave the thing sit and park, the street lights will slowly charge it. So you could just leave it sit, and eventually you'll come back to a full battery. I mean, how many of these, forget these capacitors. These aren't hooked up. These, not really needed. They're just kind of little safety things for me, and also a quicker way to measure how fast the voltage will rise without a big load on it. But I mean, this right here, I ordered, I think, 100 of these for like $10 or $14. Now, I have to wind them myself, but I don't have to go that extreme on the windings. I just did that because I wanted to go overkill. A lot of people use a third as much wire. These is a NPN 2222 transistor. You could buy 100 of those for a few bucks. They're the most common transistor in the world. That little 1000 ohm resistor, that's actually limiting how fast this is charging, and if I lower the resistance, it'll pull it even faster from there. But also, the things I'm going to be working with, trying to get energy out of, it's a realistic load. So I'm not going to overkill this and then have higher expectations than what I'm going to get in nature. But seriously practical. How many of these, you could pack that into a thumbnail sized circuit board, and that's just one. And you start multiplying that and building it and building it and building it, and in 20 minutes I'm going to be back up at 12 volts. And yeah, you can only get little bursts, but this is a little area. These things are small. And if these were lithium ion batteries charging, you would get 1,000 times more energy storage in this area with a couple of these than you'd get out of this. I'm really on the binge here. I'm really on the chase, and I'm really happy that this 90-year-old technology, that the parts then were not efficient enough to make this happen, is being brought back. I wish that I could claim it myself, but honestly, the circuit, like, it's an old circuit. It's just now with today's technology, well, I guess since the 90s, people have really been catching on to it, and not very many people. And I'm surprised this hasn't boomed. I'm surprised. So, for example, those shake flashlights, the emergency flashlights, that you shake them like a dozen times and they light up for 30 seconds. Those charge little small 2.7 volt, like maybe 200 or maybe 100 farad capacitors that are just little discs. But those things charge up. They're just like the batteries. They only use, when it gets down to 2/3 of its actual storage voltage, then it doesn't have enough voltage to actually light up the light. So there's people on the internet and on YouTube that have integrated these. You could look it up, called a Joule thief, Joule, the energy Joule, and people make these. And one guy I saw, I wish I could remember his name so I can give him credit, but he integrated this into one of those shake flashlights, and then he'd give it a couple shakes, and the thing would run for half an hour. And so I guess to prove it, and it's not going to be as bright as running these have 3 AAA batteries. I think they're AAAs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these apart, and I'm going to run it off of, I'm going to get a fresh battery, and I'm going to run a single battery, and then I'm going to put the Joule Thief circuit in there to bridge the rest. And then I'm just going to turn that on and see how long it stays on. I'll put it next to another one, turn it on. And of course, at the first it's going to be pretty bright, but it's really when the thing gets down to half a volt, between a half a volt and a third a volt, is where these things are going to have their longest life. So it'll start out bright, work its way down, and then just maintain it. Well, we'll find out. I hooked up this 12 volt light to this very circuit, and these all lit up, but they were very dim. So these take 4.5 volts, because the 1.5 volts. So this will be a really good test. That's somewhere in between, and this is practical. If you could have this as a camping light that you keep with your camping gear, you don't ever have to worry about if the batteries are still good, or if you're going to get out there and your battery's dead and you're not going to have light. You're not going to have to worry about if you leave it on, you come back to it still being on. So, good stuff. And I love doing it. I really enjoy this stuff.